Good afternoon, happy Savage Saturday, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the Casual Comic Guy here, and today, guys, we're here to talk about a story that's near and dear to my heart. We're talking about The Sword Woman from Robert E. Howard. Now, this is a story that was printed well after Robert E. Howard's death, 39 years after his death, to be exact, during the Howard boom in the 1970s, and it was first published in 1975 in the Robert E. Howard Lone Star Fictioneer #2 publication, and I'll show you a picture of that. And then there was 3 stories of the main character of this tale, Dark Agnes de Chastillon, or Agnes de Chastillon, and they're fantastic. Now the third one's a bit of a departure where it includes some fantasy elements. And that one's called The Mistress of Death, and that was the only one that wasn't completed by Howard before he died. And co-written by Gerald W. Page, who finished the story, and it saw publication afterward. But a great character, and for our purposes today, we're just going to talk about the origin. The first story, The Sword Woman, because we're going to read part 1 of an adaptation that's in the Savage Sword of Conan, Volume 1 from Dark Horse Comics. And one of the stories I thought they did an excellent job with. Really well done. Fantastic art. And they adapted it truly from page to page. And it was really well done. Now, the Sword Woman is a heroine that was kind of before her time, right? So, independent swordswoman with influences from others, and may have influenced others. This edition has a fantastic foreword by none other than Leah Brackett, who wrote Black Amazon on Mars, and that is her title character there, Sierra. And a great story in there, and just one of the pioneers of the day in the sword and sorcery fantasy fiction. All right, and we also had the Sword Woman here. And we have another one on the way, and I'll put the cover here with the Ken Kelly cover. This cover here is by, what's his name? Stephen, I think I wrote it. Yep, Stephen Fabian. So great Stephen Fabian cover. The other cover is by Ken Kelly, and I'll have that soon. There's 2 different editions of that. The Berkeley edition and from 1979, the Ace edition from 1986. And I'm working on getting the first printing of this tale in the Robert E. Howard Lone Star Fictioneer #2. So it's available, it's affordable, and I want to get it to complete The Sword Woman. Just a really epic story with probably one of the most brutal beginnings of any story ever. Really well written, and you really feel like Howard had found his niche with this, and his style, he felt like he was motivated throughout it. It was great. Just awesome characters. But also, Howard got some great praise from another writer, C.L. Moore, and her story, Jarella Jory, which is also about Jarell, another sword-fighting woman. And she had given him high praise for his sword woman character and wanted him to keep going with that, down that vein, because if you've ever read it, it's really good, and you definitely owe it to yourself, if you're a Robert E. Howard fan of any kind, to read The Sword Woman. It is great, brutal fiction, and it's Howard writing at his best, in complete sync with the character he's writing and the ancillary characters, who are great. A lot of deviousness, a lot of grounded fight scenes and treachery, especially with the first 2 tales that are completely written by Howard, where there's no kind of fantasy or sorcery. That doesn't happen until the 3rd story. And a little bit of a shift in the character. Who knows why? It's still a great story. But for our focus today, we are going to turn the pages of The Savage Sword of Conan, Volume 2, and we're going to read part 1 of The Sword Woman. And this is going to be a 3-part series, doing the first tale. And if you guys are liking the first 3 series, I have another Dark Agnes story from Dark Horse that I can review, and we'll decide after we see what happens with 1, 2, and 3. But let's turn the page. We'll get it going, and we'll start reading this. And it's just a really fun, really good adaptation. All right, so our story starts. Agnes, you red-haired spawn of the devil, where are you? And then we have her voice. My life has always been a hard one. Hello, Father. I see you're scowling. Hardly a surprise there. I barely recognize you in any other. And her father's shaking his fist at her as he's coming to her. What are you about? And it goes back to her narration. My father was a free companion, supposedly a soldier, but more a murderer, a looter, a rapist. Now he is a bitter man, and I am no more than a mule. Then we go back to them talking. She goes, you sent me into the forest for wood. And he says, but did I tell you to take the whole damn day? You've no time for idle dreaming. Today is your wedding day. And the next panel is great. You can kind of see the shock on her face. She's like, today? But you said next week. And then it goes back to her internal narration. She goes, as I realized, my father lied to keep me from running away. The gold went out of the sunlight, and the joy from the trilling birds. My lips felt brittle and dry. And I will show you this, even though I've had it up. But fantastic art. And like I said, they really did a fantastic job with this adaptation, especially from someone with my perspective who's such a big fan of the original story. So our next page continues. Her father has grabbed her by the arms like he's about to shake her. He says, well, take up your sticks and come along. The sun will fade soon. Best get you into Francois's bed. And good riddance, you ungrateful wench, that your father should be forced to drag his old bones through the forest to bring you to your husband. She's like, husband? Francois? The devil take him. And her father replies, well, you swear, wench. Will you swear, wench? Must I lesson you again? Will you flout the man I have chosen for you? Francois is a fine young man, as you can find in all Normandy. She goes, he's a fat pig, a munching, guzzling, nuzzling swine. And the father grabs her by the hair and is yanking her. He says, be silent. Francois will be a prop to my old age. My old wounds pain me. Your sister Isabel's husband is a dog. He will give me no aid. Francois will be different. He will tame you, I'll warrant. You will eat stick from his hand, my fine lady. And she's screaming as he pulls her hair. And she's fighting and clawing. She says, Francois can rot in hell, and you with him. I'll not wed him. Beat me, even kill me, but I'll never share his bed. And then the next panel is kind of harsh. You just see him punch her straight in the face and knock her out. And she says, my world went dark. And this is just the kind of creep her father is. He is selling his daughters to men for his own personal gain. And you just hate the dude. Continuing on the next page, it says, I must have been senseless for some time, long enough for father to drag me through the forest and into the village by the hair of my head. Not the first time, unfortunately, that I have regained consciousness from a beating. And a nice little panel with her regaining consciousness, a little bit of a shading, and she's waking up. And then she says no, as she realizes that she's already been dressed in her wedding gown. It was, however, the first time I've ever awoken in a wedding dress, which felt like the jaws of a snake, or a trap snapped shut around me. And then behind her, we see her sister come into view. And she's like, Isabel? And Isabel is just looking downbeaten, trodden. She says, they make ready for the wedding, sister. And back to her internal narration, she says, from without was a babbling of talking and laughter the villagers were gathering. My sister was bent and stooped, gnawed from toil and weariness and pain. Her voice held even more than its usual hesitance. And her sister, and again, the art is really good here, just showing the complete decimation of her sister, just the way she looks beaten. And she says to Agnes, you are young and strong and fresh, Agnes, and you do not love Francois, as I did not love Guillaume. Life is a hard thing for a woman. Your tall, supple body will grow broken and bent with childbearing. Your mind will grow strange and gray with toil and weariness in the everlasting face of a man you despise. Look at me, sister. Would you have my life? And Agnes replies, but there is nothing. What can a girl do? And then the next panel is an exchange, just two hands, and her sister Isabel is handing her a short dagger. And Isabel says, one thing, the only thing a woman can do to free herself. Here, take this. Do not cling by your fingers to life, to become as our mother. Do not live to become as me. Go while you are strong and supple and handsome. And you could just, very dire beginnings to this story. Like really showing that she doesn't have options. That for that time, one of the only options was to commit suicide and not be apart. So we go to the next page, and we have our title character Agnes looking at the blade in her hand. And it's in more of her internal monologue. And she says, after pressing a dagger into my hand, Isabel snatched up her children and was gone. I knew her meaning, of course, but the touch of that hilt sent a tingling through the veins of my arm. Though I'd never touched a weapon before, nothing more than a woodman's axe or a cabbage knife, this slim, lethal thing in my hand seemed somehow like an old friend come home again. As the door opened, I hurriedly hid the dagger in my bosom. Faces soon leered at me. My mother, stolid and colorless as a work animal, and Isabel with a look of haunting sorrow as she found me still alive. And the mother speaks from behind her. It's time, child. Quit your fretting. You look well enough. And as she's being ushered out by her father, she starts screaming, no, damn your sweat-slicking hides. Leave me be. Leave me. And you have people in the crowd saying, wager she'll have equal spirit in the bedroom, eh? And this is all a game to these people. And another person replies, we'll soon know. The walls are thin enough. And the other person replies again, hi, if she thinks she's screeching now, wait till sundown. And then the father replies, save your curses for your husband, bitch. I'm well sick of them. And you could just see she's surrounded by these vile, vile people that would damn this poor innocent person to the life of just being beaten and basically a slave to this man. So as she's being pushed forward some more, you see an old priest and you see the guy who she's supposed to wed coming into the picture. And her internal monologue is still going. She says, I hated them all. I hated the crowd and the wizened, blinking old priest. And most of all, I hated Francois. Francois with his chain of flowers, his fat red neck, and the smirk that made my flesh crawl. And most of all, I hated the vindictive triumph and lustful meaning in his little pig eyes. And he grabs her by the wrist and she says, stay back. And then she goes into her internal monologue. I was caught, sure as any fox in my father's traps, the ones he would kill with a sudden gleeful thrust of his sword. And then you see her draw out the dagger. The crowd began chanting for him to force a kiss on me, just as I, feeling like a taut spring unleashed, jerked the dagger from my bosom and sprang at Francois. Too slow, husband, she says as she dives on top of him, and you see him groaning as she strikes him down with the knife. She goes, I struck, tore away, fled in an instant. My father was bellowing for his bow. And her father is shooting arrows at her as she flees off into the woods. And you see them hitting trees and falling around her. She says, drunken fool, you must be senile to miss such a mark. And her internal monologue goes again. I could hear him calling me a slut, ordering me back to the village, but there would be none of that. And she yells out again, farewell, father, and to the fires of hell with you, may the devil feast on your black heart. And then back to her internal monologue where she says, how far I fled, I do not know. Behind me were the howls of the villagers in their blundering pursuit. They became distant and then faded away. I ran until my breath was jerked out of me in raking gas. My knees buckled. I fell in exhaustion, but in a thrill as well. Free, I was. Free. About me I heard rustlings and movements that betokened beasts, and perchance worse. Werewolves and goblins and vampires for all I knew. Yet I was not afraid. I had lived with worse. And we'll give you a show of this. And to think that these monsters that she feared would be worse, would be less of a threat to her than the family she had fled. Just a really dark beginning for this character. And then on the next page, we see her laying down sleeping. She goes, I put good distance between myself and the village, between myself and my father's rage, before sleep overwhelmed me. I fell into deep slumber, careless of whether beast or ghoul devoured me. But when dawn rose over the forest. It found me alive and whole, though possessed of a ravenous hunger. And you see her washing the blade that she struck down her betrothed. You see her washing it in the river. She goes, well, I should have thought to steal a meat pie or two. I'll know better next time, I suppose. But hunger be damned, I'm free, and that's worth more than a bit of naan in my stomach. And I'd have done better to have brought shoes more suited for a forest than these cursed wedding slippers. And then she sees this man on a horse approach her. She goes, I've been on the road no more than a few minutes when I heard the rider. I could have run or hid, I suppose, but doing so would have marked me the old Agnes, and I had done away with that life. And then you see this gentleman pull up to her on his horse, ride up to her. She looks up to him. He's like, hold, what's this? By Saint Denis, what spread of the forest of goddess of dawn are you, girl? And she goes, who are you to ask? And he identifies himself. He goes, why, I am Etienne Villiers, once of Aquitaine, but enough of me. Out of what mad tale did you step? A red-haired girl in tattered wedding finery, dagger in hand in the green woodlands, just at sunrise? Come, good wench, tell me the jest. Who are you? And she says, my name is Agnes de Chastillon. And he says, a noble lady in disguise. Ha! By St. Ives, the tale grows more spicy. From what shaded bower and what giant guarded castle have you escaped in these trappings of a peasant, my lady? And she is not taken aback by him. She says, my father was a bastard son of a peasant woman and the Duke de Chastillon. If you like not my name, go your ways. I've not asked you to stop and mock me. He takes off his head in respect and says, I did not mean to mock you by St. Trignan. You fit a high and noble name better than any highborn ladies I have seen simpering and languishing under it. But why are you alone in the forest at this hour with tattered wedding gown and worn shoes? And she replies, I fled last night from the village of La Fère. They wished to wed me to a man I hated. And he says, and you spent the night alone in the forest? Amazing. I know generals and mercenaries who would have stained their armor at the thought. But what will you do now? Have you friends nearby? She goes, I have no friends. I will go on until I die of starvation or something else befalls me. And now you've had the meeting of someone that will become a very important character to Agnes, and that is Etienne Villiers. And as we turn the page, he is getting on his horse again, and he says, bah, foolish talk. You are too handsome a girl to perish in the woods or be carried off by outlaws. I'll take you to the Chartres, where you can obtain employ as a serving wench and earn your keep. You can work. She goes, no man in La Fère can do more. And he says, by St. Ives, I believe it. There is something almost pagan about you, with your height and suppleness. Come, will you trust me? She goes, I would not cause you trouble. Man from La Fère will be following me. He goes, ha! Who ever heard of a peasant going further than a league from his village? You are safe enough, and for her that they will not chase her too far. And she says, not from my father. He is no mere peasant. He was a soldier. He'll follow me forever and kill me when he finds me. And this Etienne says, in that case, I have it. We'll make a boy of you. There was a suitable fellow less than a mile back. His garments will doubtless fit you. Wait here until I return. And he rides off, leaving her there now. And she is sitting by the tree, and she says, with that, he wheeled and thundered off. I wondered if I would see him again, or if he only made sport of me. The hoofs faded away, silence reigned, and I was aware of a fierce and gnawing hunger. Then, after what seemed an infinite time, again the hoofs beat through the forest, and Etienne Villiers galloped up, laughing gaily. And her first question for him is, you didn't kill him, did you? And he says, no, not I. I only sent him blubbering on his way, naked as Adam. Now, here, wench, step into the woods and slip into these clothes. And he hands her this bundle of clothes. And then next we see Agnes. She's wearing the boy's clothes. He goes, I'll take these wretched rags of yours. We'll toss them at the side of a river. Mayhap they will be found, and men will think you've drowned. Your new clothes, though, are they fitting? She goes, yes, I do believe they fit me rather well. And Etienne's looking at her, he goes, oh, by St. Ives, you do cut a splendid figure as a man. Your revered father will have less luck now, searching as he is for a maiden. But Zeus, it's a somewhat less perfect disguise than I'd hoped for. The blindest clod in the fields could tell you're a wench. Here, let me lop off those red locks. Perhaps that will further your trick. And he draws out a dagger and he starts cutting her long hair. He goes, "Even so, you're all woman, but we must chance it." And she goes, "Why do you concern yourself over me?" And he says, "Why, by God? Would any man worthy of the name leave a young girl to wander and starve in the forest? My purse holds more copper than silver, and my velvet is worn. But 18 of Villiers holds his honor as high as any belted knight or castled baron." And she replies, I thank you, Etienne. And to Chartres said, "Let me leave this old damn life behind." And the first part of our tale ends with her internal monologue. She goes, "I felt humbled and strangely ashamed, unaccustomed to any gallantry, but more than that, I felt an excitement for an open road, for a city whose gates were waiting, and for whatever else might come my way." And thus ends part one of the origin of Dark Agnes, the Sword Woman. I hope you'll tune in next week for part two, and I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the history of this story. This is a fantastic tale, and I can't wait to share more of it with you guys next week. But for part one of this, thought it was well paced, well told, very true to the actual story, and to me it was an A+ all around. I thought the art was good, it was fitting. The expressions on the face really came through, and the emotion, and that's something I enjoyed in this take. But a job well done. And let me see if I can actually give credit to the people who did this tale before we sign off here. And so Paul Tobin is the writer, and Francesco Francavilla was the artist. And an adaptation well done. Part one is great. I've read the whole thing, of course, a couple times. I love the whole adaptation. But like I said, we will get to part two next week. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of part one. Did you enjoy the story as much as I did? I mean, this is a story that's well beloved by me. Dark Agnes is up there with Conan for me. I absolutely love this character, and I think her origins are some of the most brutal around. And the brutality has not yet stopped for her. There is more on the way. You guys haven't seen anything yet. But thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep it casual.